Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the second episode of your new favorite internet show, Visioncon Live. I'm your host, Zach Wilson. But you didn't come here to see me today. You came to see the man of the hour. He voices Xander in Beyblade Burst, Jun and Kakegurui, probably mispronounced that, and Roche in Final Fantasy VII Remake, just to name a few. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to introduce you all to the man who has recently stolen my heart, Austin Lee Matthews. Austin, how you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
Oh, dandy as candy. Austin, I just wanted to say, first off, a personal thank you for joining us today for the second episode of Visioncon Live. You know,
I'm happy to do so.
I was telling Kyle Bear, the other day when we did the Tuesday for the first episode, you know, shot my shot to certain celebrities. Didn't really expect to hear back from any of you guys. But when I heard from you specifically, I was with one of my friends named Nessa, and I'll have to admit I did a little bit of a squeal when I saw that you responded to me. So just to say that
I still fanboy squeal sometimes, and I do this professionally, so like I get it.
Thank you. That does make me feel better. Well, speaking of you being a professional voice actor, you know, we all know that you have a long list in your rapport, but I actually wanted to start this interview by going all the way back to your superhero origin story. How did we get from here all the way back? Start us from the beginning, Kyle.
Okay, if you want to start at the very, very, very beginning, my mother said I made noises when I came out. And I've always been, I guess, making noises and doing stupid voices and stuff like that. My first impression I ever did was Steve Irwin. And so I was always like, all right, so we see this little spider over here. My mother would just be like, Austin, please.
As impressive as that is, it's 2 a.m.
Yeah, I got in trouble for, constantly doing voices in school. And I used to be fascinated by anything that showed off the voice actors working. It started with the SpongeBob DVD. They had a whole featurette about the voice actors and how they do the voices and do the SpongeBob laugh and all that stuff. And I watched that. Oh gosh, I think I watched that featurette more than I watched any single episode on that DVD. And then high school rolls around, and my friends, we internet cartoons constantly, and we're always quoting them. And there was a whole period of time when I had the entirety of Metal Gear Awesome 2 by Aaron Hansen memorized. And one of my friends was like, "Hey, Austin, do Metal Gear Awesome for us." And I basically did the entire thing from memory in the voices. He's like, "Dude, that's really cool. You should do that for a living." And I'm just like, hey, maybe I should. So one day I auditioned for a machinima. And ended up getting cast for 5 out of the 6 characters that I auditioned for. And I was like, maybe I should keep doing this. And then fast forward a couple years to Anime Expo 2011, and I made the finals of their voice acting competition. And then in 2014, that same convention had a open audition for a show called Magi the Labyrinth. Wait, no, this was the Kingdom of Magic. And I ended up being the first callback that year. And started recording a couple months after that. And that was my first studio gig. By then, I'd been working for about 5 years at that point. But now I'm going on 11 years, and I've been doing professional in studio stuff for anime and video games since 2014. But I've been doing this collectively since 2009. But fast forward, and I got myself an agent last year. One of the first things I auditioned for was Roche, and 2 weeks later I booked Roche, and well, here we go.
Man, coming out the gate, you're big. I mean, granted, Maggie and all that, those are, big roles, but, Final Fantasy VII Remake, one of the most anticipated games of the year, games of the decade even, and you come out the gate and nail one of the auditions. That's very impressive. And don't worry, ladies and gentlemen, we'll get to that in a minute. I've been waiting for this a long time. But let me just mute my. But first and foremost, after that, I just wanted to touch on something that you mentioned briefly. Is that you started kind of your, what's the word I'm looking for? You kind of got your start, if you want to call it that, in a machinima, which I've actually noticed a lot of people or voice actors kind of got their start. So do you want to, if you want to go ahead and plug the machinima, or if you don't, just kind of, how did that process go?
The machinima never actually came out. But like because I booked that, I started making friends in the community who were also going to be in that, and they kind of helped point me like in the direction of like where to like get, you know, more auditions and stuff like that, because I found that audition on YouTube.
Really?
And so like they're like, hey, like, you know, YouTube's not the best place to find auditions. I'm surprised that you found this at all. Here's a place you know, find some more. And from there I booked some, you know, some animations and stuff like that, and some games. And that's really where I got my big start. Was like Machinima never came out. It was the people that I met from that experience that really like helped me like get my start. But even like past then, I know I did some Machinima. Don't really do them that much anymore. Like
Well, the big machinima. Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. I just said my internet. Okay, there we go. It said my internet connection was unstable, and it's back now.
Okay, yeah, I was about to say we lost you for a little bit, but what I was saying was, I mean, kind of the big heyday of machinima. I mean, back when, I was like, you know, in my early teens, you know, machinimas were huge. They were all the rage. You know, you couldn't go on YouTube's front page without getting a recommended video for any machinima.
Oh yeah.
Not so much anymore, so that's not really too surprising to hear. Yeah. But then you kind of plod your way back, and so then I want to talk next about some of the anime roles that you have. If you want to go dive kind of deeper in there, be them Beyblade, Kakegurui, the ton of others that you have. Like I said with Kyle's interview Tuesday, you know, if we spent the time to go over each and every one of your roles, you know, we'd be here all day. Yeah, so I'm gonna let you take kind of the helm and talk about the ones that you are kind of either most proud of, or ones that kind of most most show off, you know, your rise to fame.
Okay. Well, I can say that the first anime I ever got cast in was Magi the Kingdom of Magic. But the first anime I ever recorded was Kill la Kill. And I'm very, very proud of that, because I had literally just finished watching that show in Japanese when I got a phone call basically saying like, hey, we want you in Magi, but also, hey, are you available tomorrow to record Kill la Kill? And I'm just like, yeah, of course I can record my freaking favorite anime of the year. Are you kidding me? I was so excited about that, and I did some walla for that. You can't find me as any named characters, but if you listen to the crowd and pick out individual voices in the crowd, I'm in there. But then from there, I did a lot of like bit parts here and there in Seven Deadly Sins. Oh gosh, what else did I do? JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, stuff like that. Hunter. I voiced, I think, my first named character in Hunter x Hunter. I was a couple of characters in there. I was this really kind of like timid trickster guy named Motorik in that. And he shows up for like an episode, and then a couple episodes later ends up getting completely screwed over. And then we don't know what happens to him. And then after that, I got cast in, I think this is the order, I'm pretty sure. I got cast as Jun in Kakegurui, just like apropos of nothing. Like they like, I didn't audition for anything like that. They're just like, hey, you want to be this guy? His name is Jun, and like a named character in a thing. Absolutely,
let's go.
Yeah, I was excited. I'm like, I don't even have to audition, huh?
Woo! Celeb status.
And the first like big character I remember auditioning for and booking was in not an anime, but a video game. The video game, I believe, actually came before Kakegurui, because we were just talking about anime, but I'm gonna go jump back. The game that kind of helped me like get my feet in some places was Cyber Dimension Neptunia. I voiced the final boss in that game, and I know a lot of people probably played that game. It's a very niche game, but that was a kind of character that I've always wanted to play because he's very much just this like bombastic. I would almost say it's the closest I've ever gotten to playing the Joker, because he's kind of like this demonic trickster who's always cackling and going and it was a lot of fun getting to do that. And that game is just ridiculous. The comedy is just all over the place and it's hilarious. But that kind of like got me to the point where I'm like, okay, maybe I do have the ability to, do this, because I wasn't really booking any major auditions prior to that. So that was really what kind of got me on the ground.
I mean, I would argue that you definitely do have the ability to do this, because just there, I mean, you have a naturally kind of low register, but then like on a dime, you just like went that high up.
Oh yeah, but like at that point, I didn't know that. But that was like the moment where I'm like, okay, maybe I do for this. And that was back in, I think, 2000, either 15 or 16. I'm not entirely sure at this point. But yeah, that was my first like, okay, maybe I can play named characters. Maybe it's gonna be a background forever,
Sure. Now, do you kind of have a preference? Because I know that you have, you do video games, anime, cartoons. Is there like any preference that you have, or is it just kind of all, the same deal, different name?
My absolute preference is in what we call prelay cartoons, which prelay basically means that we record it and then they animate to us. As opposed to dubbing over it. I really enjoy doing that because more often than not, in the few prelay shows that I have done, we record it in a group. And I enjoy recording in a group with the other act. It makes it a lot more fun to bounce off of everybody. And we get better performances typically when we record as a group. But other than that, like if I had to pick like another, like my second favorite thing to do is absolutely video games, because with video games I get to go hog wild. Like for example, Roche. Like I absolutely got to go nuts with Roche, and there was some dubbing in there too, but like even the dubbing was 2-hour lip movements and not the Japanese lip movements, which was really cool to see. But yeah, those are my two like big preferences.
Which I am glad you brought that character up, because ladies and gentlemen, give me one sec. I had to mute something real quick. Ladies and gentlemen, anybody who knows me, Zach Wilson, not the person you came to see today, you know that one of my favorite things in the world is Final Fantasy VII.
Oh yeah.
Now, when I heard that the remake was coming out, obviously was in tears with excitement. Super stoked for the remake of my favorite game of all time. Fast forward, they announced that they're having new story elements. Awesome. Fast forward again, they announced they're having new story characters. So I'm playing the game, and first off, everybody who's watching, slight spoilers for Final Fantasy VII Remake. If you don't want to be spoiled right now, they're minor spoilers, but if you don't want to see any of the
It's
spoilers,
early enough in the game that it's not that big of a spoiler.
It really is, but I still get teared apart in the comments if I don't at least mention it. So if you guys don't want anything at all spoiled for you, you can go ahead and jump out. This is going to be recorded, so you'll be able to see it once you either got past that story, or you can just fast forward through it. But with
or
that,
I can do this when we're done talking about this.
Ooh, I like that. Let's do that. But so now that is out of the way, I'm playing the motorcycle scene. It's super fun. Love the music behind it. I drive past a certain character. He's looking pretty cool. I tried my best to stay away from as many trailers that I could for the game, because I wanted to experience, the remake fresh with myself. and just, Roche, which is that character's name, you're battling him as Cloud, and just he's wisecracking. He's just such a fun and charismatic character. Let's push it past the red line. One of my favorite lines of the entire remake. And then you get to fight him again later. And just like, he's such a fun and unique character. And you honestly made me accept, like, I was on the fence until that moment about these new characters. Granted, leading up to that, you didn't really meet any big named new characters outside of like Johnny. But at that point, I was like, you know what? Maybe Square Enix knew what they were doing. So I'm just really curious to know if there was any inspiration behind Roche, kind of what was your thought process behind it, and just anything you'd like to add.
Well, real quick, I should say Johnny's actually not a new character, not even a new named character. He was in the original. Yeah, he shows up at the Honeybee Inn.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah, he is in the original. He just shows up much earlier in the remake.
For sure.
But yeah, the thing with Roche is like, he is one of those characters that like I feel like I have always wanted to play, but didn't really know how to articulate that kind of character, because he's one of those villain / like rival characters who is completely hilarious and also slightly terrifying, because he laughs harder the more that you hit him.
Mm-hmm.
And like, that's the kind of villain that I really wanted to play. Like this completely just, and I say villain very loosely because he's anti-hero at worst.
Oh, yeah.
But I feel like he was always kind of the character that I was like meant to play. So getting to finally do that and like have like, being able to like describe that kind of character meant a lot to me. But also like, I'm a big Final Fantasy VII fan. Before I even played the original game, I was a big fan of the compilation of Final Fantasy VII. I've seen Advent Children about 50 times since it came out in my high school years. I cosplayed as Sephiroth in high school. I was absolutely ballistic about it in every way, except for the fact that I never actually had the opportunity or means to play the original. And finally, like, when I got cast as Roche, I was like, okay, screw it, I'm playing the original now. And like, getting to experience that was just an absolute blast. And like, I know the game has aged in many ways, but like, even with its, like, the big moments still hit me. The big, 26 years of spoilers, that big moment still hit me. The ending gets me. Like, all the big important moments of that game got me, and I had a lot of fun with it. And the music is, between the original and the remake, my favorite video game soundtrack of all time, bar none.
Oh, easily. Without a doubt.
But
it was already my favorite. Obviously I've got, the soundtrack, then my original copy. But, that was another thing that I was a little kind of on the fence about with the soundtrack, because that's a soundtrack that hold very near and dear to me. But they did a fabulous job with that as well. The whole motorcycle scene is actually Run, 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 I believe is the name of the song. That is right after the motorcycle scene. By far my favorite song on the soundtrack thus far in, part one. But you did touch on something I actually wanted to kind of swing back to. He definitely isn't a villain. I know.
Yeah, I know he's not.
The game at first kind of tries to frame him as such, but then, later on when you fight him the second time, he actually like fights all the kind of unnamed troops like off of you before then, fighting you. So he's a very interesting and dynamic character. And kind of what was that process kind of like to like kind of embody that? Or was that just something that you kind of did off the top of your head, or did it kind of take a few takes to kind of nail down?
You mean like in terms of like how he feels about Cloud, I guess?
Mm-hmm. Well, because like you can definitely hear it in his voice, which is 100% yours. So thank you.
Yeah. So, the funny thing about that is that I kind of got this vibe, even in that first scene where he's kind of like the villain of that scene. They really like frame him as just kind of like, this completely like, nuts soldier guy who's gonna try to kill you. But like, I had this vibe, like even in his first like recording moments, I'm just like, I don't think that this guy is evil. And he seems completely fascinated by Cloud. Um, and so like I kind of like made this, whether it was conscious or subconscious, I'm just like, okay, I've got a crush on Cloud. I'm gonna try and like make it sound like this guy kind of does too, but he doesn't know it. um and you kind of slowly start to hear him kind of open up more and more to Cloud over the course of that scene, and it kind of really helped with that dynamic. And that it ended up being kind of uh, brilliant of me to do that, because that ending realized like, yeah, no, he doesn't want to kill Cloud. He just wants to have fun and party with him, and fight him and possibly date him. I don't know. Uh, but I just I really had a lot of fun getting to do that. Like getting the opportunity to go up against one of my favorite characters of all time was immediately like, oh, I'm gonna love this. And you can hear that in Roche's voice that he's loving it. Um, and it was very much like I was playing kind of what I would have wanted to be in the Final Fantasy universe, which is just this guy who doesn't give a crap about Shenra, doesn't give a crap about Avalanche. He just wants to fight Cloud, because that's what I would want to do. Is I'd want to fight Cloud and party with him.
Well, and I'm not trying to short any of the other voice actors. Everybody, something I was very impressed with the remake was that everybody's the English dub did a phenomenal job. So it's very
everybody is great in this game.
With that said, I will argue that gun to my head, if I had to pick the character whose voice actor sounds like he's having the most fun, it would definitely be you. You just really hear it in your voice, and that's obviously a credit to your own skills. But just it really does show off how much fun and passion you had in the role, which actually just kind of elevated the character to god tier, in my opinion. But so I did want to actually rewind from Roche. I kind of shot the gun a little too early with that one. I did want to talk about Beyblade and Xander, because I know a lot of people who were coming to this stream and are going to watch this later are big fans of yours, Xander. So I wanted to touch on that, if there was any like kind of fun backstory as to how you got that role, aside from obviously applying for it. But kind of how'd you end up being one of the big characters in that anime?
So the thing with Xander is that I believe up until the point that I voiced him, he'd been voiced by Andrew Francis, who's up in Canada. And ended up bringing the entire production down here to California. And so they needed a new voice for Xander, since they weren't able to get, the original guys, because they basically recast everybody. And they really wanted somebody who could match like Alex Francis, but also make him a bit older. Because at this point, if you look at Xander in Burst Turbo, he is 14, but he looks like he's 30. He looks like Jotaro Kujo in Burst Turbo. So like they wanted a guy who could like still embody that Xanderness, but like make him sound like, like really like, machismo, and like he'd been doing this for, half of his life, and just like, hey everybody, how you doing, kid? Like next thing we're gonna do, we're gonna start with 100 battles, and then you're gonna battle me. And so it was really kind of interesting getting to do that. That audition process, I think I auditioned for Xander about 4 or 5 times before they finally were like, yeah, no, we're done auditioning you. You're Xander. I think that was like the year where there were 2 characters who I auditioned for like 5 times a piece, and I don't know why it took that long for both characters, because the most callbacks I'd gotten before that was 1 for a character. We don't usually do that many callbacks, if we do callbacks at all, anymore at least. But so the fact that I had to like audition for that many times was like, okay, I know they want me because they're having me audition this many times. Please just let me be Xander. And when they finally they sent an email that was basically like, anime Beyblade Burst Turbo, and I'm like, oh great, they're gonna have me audition for Xander again. And then I open the email and it says, hi, we'd like to inform you that you've been cast as Xander. And I was just like,
Is that I did want to rewind real quick though. There's not really many callbacks, if any, in voice acting. Is that stressful at all, or do you kind of prefer that? Because you kind of get just like one shot.
Yeah, I do prefer the one shot, the one kill method. But like callbacks, like the thing about callbacks is that sometimes by that point I have completely forgotten that I've even auditioned for that character. So getting to do a callback at that point, I was like, oh, okay, I made an impression, time to, leave it all on the floor, and like it's not really that stressful to me, because to me it's just like any other audition. I'm just auditioning for it a second time. Like I tend not to stress over any audition that I do. Like even Roche, like as much as I love Final Fantasy 7, 2 takes on Roche, and I'm like, okay, if I do any more than overthinking it. And so I put in 2 pretty different takes. One that was more in my normal voice, and one that was more in the Roche voice. And that ended up being the one that they wanted. But like, yeah, like they're really not that stressful to me. But I know that there are other voice actors who are just like, oh, callbacks are the most stressful thing because you made the first impression. Now you got to show that you can, keep it up. And I'm just like, no, I mean, yeah, but like if that first impression was strong, then just, keep, doing what you're doing and listening to what the director differently. Like if you listen to the director, they're not that stressful at all unless the director doesn't know what they're talking about.
Sure.
But that's very, very rare that the director doesn't know what they're talking about, that I've found, because
It's
they
kind of their whole
know what they want.
job. Yeah. But another thing I wanted to touch on is we've had a lot of voice actors kind of be guests at both physical Visioncon, virtual Visioncon, and then now our new show, Visioncon Live. And so a lot of people have come up kind of from the woodworks, interested in voice acting, whether it being, just a newfound passion, or this is what they've been wanting to do their entire lives. Is there any advice that you kind of learned along the way that you would like to then bestow upon them, everybody who's watching, either live or later?
My absolute best pitch that I can give anybody is take voice acting classes, please. Please take voice acting classes. And like when a professional says you should take voice acting classes, that's generally they mean it. Like please, like this job is, as they little v big A, voice acting. Like you got to know how to act before you do this. It's not just about being able to do voices, because like I don't know if you've heard, like Roche is not that far off from my normal voice. A lot of like the named characters that I play, aside from like Demon King Jester, are not that far off from my normal voice. It's not that I can't do other voices, but most of my work comes from the fact that I'm a good actor. And I became a good actor because I took acting classes that really, helped me solidify, methods that I still use. I personally recommend the Adventures in Voice Acting classes that Bang Zoom teaches. I believe that they are now starting to do virtual classes with them. Bill Holmes is another great teacher. He's good for helping with like commercial work and helping with specifically with like commercial auditions. he will help you kind of like, get in to record commercials and stuff with, knowing how to um, properly record what commercial directors are looking for, because a lot of people, when they think of commercials, they think of like, a guy who talks like this. But that's not what anybody really wants anymore. They want somebody who's going to talk to you like, how I'm talking to you right now, nice and casual, nice and conversational. Just, basically just talking to you like sometimes even just straight up like, intimate pillow talk, just like, like, hey, here's what's going on and we need to talk shop about this. Like, those are the classes that I took that really kind of helped me get where I am. I don't think I would be nearly where I am today if I hadn't taken an acting classes, because I would just be a, glorified impressionist if I hadn't taken acting classes,
Which I think
so that's my biggest piece of advice is please take acting classes, and don't complain to me when I tell you to take acting classes.
Which I think is the common misconception with voice acting and acting. A lot of people don't realize they're two sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
Like, because you have to, it's in the name itself, like you said, acting, voice acting, because, yes, we're all gifted, well, I guess for the most part, we're all gifted with a voice, but, just because you have a voice doesn't mean you can become an accomplished voice actor. Case in point with you,
Yes.
I mean, just like on a dime, you can switch from your natural voice to something completely off your register and everywhere in between. And not everybody, myself included, can't do that. So obviously, it's a learned skill. And I feel like that's something a lot of people don't really realize. Is that kind of something you agree with?
Yeah, it's absolutely like with any skill, it can be learned. And there are obviously people who are going to take to it more easily than others.
Oh, sure.
There are some people just have talent, but even those people with talent need to take classes, because they will fundamentals that, even though whether they've got the natural gift for it or not, they need to know the fundamentals, because generally that will help them know whether or not they're overacting or underacting, and help them, give a more believable performance on things. So like, yeah, I absolutely think that it is a skill that can, and if you want to get into it, should be learned.
Sure. Now, kind of jumping ship from this, I wanted to touch on one more thing before we kind of wrap things up and go to viewers' comments. A lot of your characters that you voice, at least I've noticed, they're not necessarily good or bad guys. They kind of blur the line a little bit. Is that by design? Is that kind of your favorite type of characters, or is that just kind of completely coincidental?
I think for some it's kind of coincidental. But like, I have always been really like bombastic and loud, and I know that I talk louder than most people do. And those kind of, as I call them, chaotic neutral characters, really are the most fun for me personally to play, because I like, touting that line of like, what's good, what's bad, are they going to help you, or are they going to hinder you? Like, it's that unpredictability kind of, or I guess unpredictability. I'm sounding like Ian Malcolm, but that kind of unpredictability there kind of helps me have fun with those characters. Like Ash in Trails of Cold Steel, that dude, like when I get to play Ash, like I'm gonna have a lot of fun, because he wants to be a good person. He's got just like this attitude about him that makes him kind of an asshole. But like, at least he's forward about the fact that he's a jerk. Like he starts to become a good over the course of this. And you can tell that once he starts that path that he wants there, but like, he doesn't really care about anybody but himself in the first part of that game. And I really enjoyed getting to embody that, because it's just that kind of arc is a lot of fun for me. And like with Roche, like we don't even know what his whole arc is yet, and he's just an absolute blast to play. Just chaos all the time. Like, I love getting to embody chaos, and I am the most peaceful guy I know. It lets me kind of like let off steam, I guess.
Sure, absolutely.
But yeah, so it's both, I guess, intentional and unintentional, because when I realize that I can play those kinds of characters and play them well, I'm like, okay, I'm definitely gonna, like, do my best to get characters like that because I can do that. But that's not to say that I don't go for other stuff, obviously. But like, those are like the characters that I'm confident that when I see a character like that in an audition, I'm like, I'm probably gonna get that one.
Well, just yeah, that's what you're most known for. But I did want to
Yeah.
touch on, obviously, at the end of the day, this is a job. It's how you support yourself. It is income. But does that limit you to kind of the roles you take? Because obviously you're very passionate about the majority, if not all, of the roles that you've had over these years. But is that a requirement to take a job?
What do you mean?
So, Roche, for instance, you were already a huge Final Fantasy fan. But let's say I'm some studio exec of Zach Pictures, and I was like, hey, I want you to voice this character from a thing you've never heard before over something that's really niche, and you probably actually won't like it. Will you still voice it if I give you, some amount of money?
Oh, I'll absolutely do it, because for me, it's not whether or not I will enjoy the particular thing. It's more along the lines of, I just have fun doing this job.
Mm-hmm.
I have the most fun when I'm behind the microphone playing. Even if I never even think about that character ever again, like, I just want to have fun doing this. Like, it's like, yes, like, do this and I make money off of it, but like, first and foremost, this is just something I feel like I was always meant to do. And it's evidenced by the fact that, like, whenever I go in and I play a character, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have a good time, because I'm gonna, even if it's like a character who's like super, like, depressing, like, I'm gonna get to put on a show for people, and I know that I'm going to put forth my best effort, and somebody is like it, whether or not I consume it or not. Some And that's fine. Like, I just have fun doing this, and I encourage everybody that to kind of think of it in that same way. Don't think of this as the minute that you think of this just as a job is the minute that you're not going to have fun with this anymore. If you're doing this just to be famous, that is also the wrong way to go about it. Do this because you want to do it. Do this because getting behind the microphone is the most you have. Because, like, you can tell when somebody isn't having a good time with this, because it's so evident in their performance. They don't put anything into it, and you can tell it's just a job.
Sure.
So, like, yeah, no, I will absolutely, like, if a director is like, hey, you want to do this? Yeah. No second guessing at all. I'll do it. Yeah.
And that kind of regardless of the character. Even, do you have any apprehension about maybe what the character represents? Be it like, what if the character's like a huge misogynist just because he's a bad guy, or just is there any like that, or you kind of just ready to roll whenever?
Yeah, like, I mean, like, with those kind of characters, somebody's gotta be the bad guy, you know? Like, if that character is the villain and those are the things that he embodies, I don't embody things, but somebody's got to do that. And if the director thinks that I'm the best fit for that character, I'll do it. Like, I mean, like, look at Jun in Kakegurui. He's probably the worst person I have ever played, but it's one of my best performances. Um, and he is just completely terrible. He abuses people who he thinks are beneath him. He's terrible to women, absolutely horrible to women. Um, but somebody had to do that. And, I gotta say, I had a lot of fun being that character, because he has these big explosions. Every villain, well, almost every villain, when they are like that, you gotta find a way to break them down. Somebody's got to break them down. Usually the protagonist breaks them down. So getting to go from that super confident jerk who abuses and, just completely mistreats women to women breaking him down and seeing his explosion at the end of it is one of the most satisfying moments of my acting career, because I was like, okay, with this character, I get to go from 0 to 100 in 2 episodes. And like the most satisfying part about those is when they are beaten down, when they lose, because like, hell yeah, the villain just lost. I don't care if I'm the villain. Like, I got to lose as the villain. That's pretty cool. So like, yeah, no, I really qualms against playing those kinds of characters. Like, unless the entire is morally questionable, like I don't really have any apprehensions. But if the project is morally questionable, like if I look at the whole thing, I don't really like what you're doing here. I won't, like, in that case, I won't do it. Like, there are very few times where I'm just like, yeah, no, I won't do that.
Sure.
I'm pretty open to just about everything,
Yeah, for sure.
except for porn.
Well, yeah, naturally, and I feel like that was one of the stipulations. All right, guys. Well, now is your chance to type in your questions, because we're going into a segment I like to call the plug zone. So while we're doing that, go ahead and type your questions down, and I'll read them right after this. So we're in the plug zone right now, Austin. So anything you want to plug, anything you want to promote, you are free to do so right now.
Okay. Well, I've been streaming a lot lately. I've been streaming on Twitch a lot. I'm on there under Amtrax VMTRAX AMTRAXVA, which is also my Twitter. And I just the other night I streamed just casually Final Fantasy VII. I streamed it on a hard mode a few weeks ago. But then the other night, I'm just like, hey, you know what? It's the night before my birthday. I want to chill with you guys. I like hanging out in Midgar. Let's chill in Midgar for a bit and beat the Hell House, And so, that's basically what I do there. So if you just want to do some chill hangouts on Twitch, I'm there all the time. I'm working on becoming partner. My website is austinmatthewsva.com. And also, I have a radio play that I've been developing for 8 years. Only published the pilot for in I believe February, called Megaton Girl. That's on YouTube. It's on iTunes. It is basically just about wherever you cast, I think. But yeah, it's Megaton Girl. It's a superhero radio play, LGBT friend. The main character is as pansexual as I am, and if you like, high-flying superhero adventures and sludge monsters getting, beaten down, then you'll have fun with that.
Which actually, I'm sorry, we're going to leave the plug zone, but we're not going into viewers' comments yet, because you actually touched on something that I actually want to dive a little deeper in real quick, if you will indulge me. Something that I saw when I was, doing a little research on you, that I actually was really glad that I saw and really wanted you on the show, is that a lot of the content you do and just you as a person are very LGBTQ plus friendly. And so I really just kind of, if you don't mind, wanted to touch on that real quick to see if, is that something you intentionally kind of put into kind of who you are as a person, but also in what you do professionally, or is it just kind of something that's found you?
It's one of those where, like, when I create the stories that I want to see, and those are the stories that I want to see. And like, it very rarely do I ever get to play LGBT characters at all. I am very straight. So people cast me as straight characters because I for straight very easily, even though I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, getting to do stuff like that is very fulfilling for me. partially why I made Mega first place is because like I don't get to, take part in a lot of those stories in fiction at all. Like I get to take part in it in real life because that's just who I am. But like in fiction, I don't get to do that a lot. So I'm just like, okay, you know what? It wasn't always intended to be this way at first, but it slowly over the course of 8 years turned into the story that I wanted to tell. Like originally, the two main characters of Megaton Girl were just friends. But then eventually I'm just like, you know what? No, they're going to be girlfriends and they're going to be girlfriends at the start of the show. So like I just, I wanted to see a superhero show about that sort of relationship. Like that's I don't see that a lot in any media, let alone superhero media,
Which that,
especially mainstream. So I'm just like, you know what? I'm going to shoot my shot and I'm going to go for this. And so far, the people who have listened to it really, really like it and really, really like the relationship between Connie and Laurel. And I really am glad that people have enjoyed that relationship as much as I enjoyed building it, because these characters are very important to me and I want them to be happy, and they're the most happy when they're together. And like that's the kind of story that I want to tell, is about IT people being happy and kicking ass.
well, I mean, representation does matter. I mean, and
Super
especially in
matters.
fiction media. Somehow, we're in the 21st century, and that's still a very slow concept to most studio execs. So I'm really overjoyed, and it was one of the things I wanted to make sure we touched on in this. That you understand that, and you advocate for that. So
Yeah.
with that said, we're going out of the plug zone and going into viewer comments. So let me
All right.
quick kind of scroll all the way back so I make sure I don't miss any. All right. A lot of people are super excited to see you here.
How's it going, everybody? Sorry, I'm not in the chat, so I can't see what everybody's saying, but I hope that y'all are having a good time.
Oh, they're all having a great time. Most of which me, but I mean, I'm a little biased. But okay, so Isabella, I believe she didn't tune in for this part. Do you have any tips on how to start out as a voice actor? Well, that's actually a good one. I'll kind of do an addendum to this question because we kind of answered it earlier with take voice acting lessons. But let's say you do take voice acting lessons. You're raring to go. How do you then go from that point to landing a gig? What do you have to do?
You gotta audition every day. You gotta work on this every day. When you're not in the booth getting paid, you're still working because you're still auditioning and you're still making. And until you get to the point where you're firmly established, you keep working on that. There's lots of places online that you can make those connections. The Voice Acting Club is where I made my connections. I wholly recommend that. They've got a great Discord channel that I am actually a part of. So if you want to come in there, reach out to me. I can help you guys out with whatever you want. And there are plenty of other actors in there who are willing to help you out with what you want too, because we're all a big family and we've all got to help each other. And on the Voice Acting Club, you will also find lots of auditions. You got to audition and you got to audition for everything, especially when you're just starting out. You got to audition for everything so that you can find something that sticks and so that you can find where your strengths lie, what you need to improve on, and all of that. That is really what I feel, aside from taking acting classes, the most important part of just starting out. And that's one of those things that I wish that I had known more in my first year going into this. Because that first year, I made a few connections, but a lot of them were just kind of coincidental. But then when I really started near the end of that year, focusing more on auditioning every day and making those connections, I ended up making some pretty big strides by the end of that, the end of that calendar year, I should say. And then that next year I made even more friends, because I went to a convention and I went to voice acting gatherings. If there were actors that were just yeah, no, we're gonna do a big gathering, we're all gonna go to IHOP or whatever, I'm just oh sure, yeah, I'll do that. And I ended up meeting longtime friends there, Mark Allen Jr., Sean Chiplock, Kira Buckland, all those people. I met a lot of them I met Kira earlier. I met Kira at an arcade after she cast me in a animation that she wrote. But like in that first anime expo that I went to, at that meeting, like I made so many, now I would say hopefully lifelong friends, who I have been delighted to work with and who I have gotten to grow with and watch them grow as well. So if you ever see something like that at a local convention, definitely go to it because you will meet people there. That's that's my sales pitch on that.
Well, I love it. I mean, that made a lot of sense. And speaking of animation, we do have a viewer comment. A fan asks, what's your favorite anime that you have seen? And then in a second question, what are some of the favorite animes that you've actually voiced in? So a two-pronged question.
Well, my favorite anime that's currently running is My Hero Academia. I've been watching that with my fiance, and we have been absolutely in love with that show. My favorite anime of all time, there are two of them. There's Nichijou and Cowboy Bebop. I love both of those for very different reasons. Nichijou is just completely ballistic, and it gives me like big cat vibes, and I love Katamari. That whole show is like, if Katamari ever got an animated, it would look and feel like Nichijou. And Cowboy Bebop, it's Cowboy Bebop. I ain't gotta explain shit. It's Cowboy Bebop.
I was really hoping that was going to be one of them, so I'm pretty psyched. Okay,
yeah.
So
one that I don't ever really get to talk about, Big O. Big O is one that I absolutely adore.
Okay, but then what are some of the favorite ones that you voiced? That was the second part.
Kill la Kill is probably the big one that I really like. I love that show. Like, it is just completely insane. And I love the animation. The animation and the music is stellar. And oh gosh. I didn't watch a lot of it, but I really liked what I saw of Seven Deadly Sins. Diane is my favorite character. And Magi, the Kingdom of Magic, was also really good. I love that show, and I wish it would get more love, because it's just a wildly imaginative show that is pretty loosely based on the Arabian Nights, like the stories of like Aladdin and stuff like that. But it is so much fun and just a beautiful show.
Okay, well, actually, we're going to jump ship from animation real quick. And going into actually self-care. Marissa wrote in and asked, what are your favorite forms of self-care? As in, how do you take care of your voice, health, for your job as a voice actor?
I sing a lot. That helps me
Really?
kind of like, keep my voice, fresh and my range wide. I sing a lot of songs that like allow me to like really stretch my range without hurting myself. Like, excuse me, I think I'm gonna sneeze at some point during this stream. I apologize if I do.
Well, please say bless you, don't worry.
Like, oh gosh, what's that one's beautiful song from Nier Automata. Like, I have actually gone on record saying that that's one of my big warm-up songs when I'm going to a session. Just because it's so operatic and it really opens up my chest and my throat. And it helps me, stretch my vocal range a lot because that song is all over the place vocally.
Also phenomenal.
Also, I drink water all the time. I don't have my bottle with me right now, but like I usually have my bottle with me like right next to me wherever I go. I'm always keeping my voice nice and lubricated. I drink tea with honey before and sometimes after stressful sessions. And on days where I do really vocally strenuous sessions, the rest of the day, like, I don't talk. Like, I do talk. It's like very, short sentences. But yeah, other than that, like, yeah, I don't really talk after those because I don't want to risk damaging my voice, especially session the next day.
Sure. Well, there was one last question I wanted to touch on before we close this episode out. I wanted to know, what is the advantages? I mean, obviously, there's some obvious ones, but the difference between, you finding these auditions and auditioning and stuff like that versus you having an agent, which you mentioned you recently acquired. Kind of what's the advantage to getting an agent, and how soon as a voice actor should you go about getting
So I will answer that second part first.
one? Okay.
You should go about getting an agent to have an agent, because if you try and get an agent too early, you might make a bad connection and the agent may be wary of you in the future, because they'll, you're not really mature enough to be part of this if you reach out too early with a demo that you put together with, no, actual like skills. I really didn't even attempt to until I'd been doing this for about 9 years. And even then, I don't think I was ready. When I was ready to get an agent, I had a director say, hey, you should have an agent by now, and I'm going to get you in touch with them. And that is honestly how you should go about it, is having a director get you in touch with them. Because if you don't have a good recommendation, if you don't have a great recommendation from a great director, most agents are just going to be just like, who's this guy? And that's how it was for a bit with me, where like, I'd send something and agents would just not even like respond. But like when I had a really great director give me a recommendation to my agent, before the end of the day, they're like, hey, let's schedule a meeting. And I was just like, okay, yeah, schedule a meeting, sure. So that's the first part of it. The advantage to having an agent is I get way, way, way more auditions from getting an agent. And my agent also gets to be the bad guy for me. Say I'm waiting on money, and it's like usually most paychecks come in about 30 days after we record. Very recently, I had to, my agent reached out to me and was like, hey, you haven't gotten paid for this yet, and it's been a few months. Would you like us to look into this? And I'm just like, yes, please. And they're just like, okay, we'll get that taken care of. And I'm getting my money because sometimes I'm just like, reaching out to people is stressful, and I don't want to seem like, I'm like desperate and be, the jerk.
Sure, but then
it's hard for me to be firm.
But
when you have an agent in your corner, they can be firm.
You got to eat at the end of the day. So, the money's kind of required.
Yeah, when I hooked on with my agent, the first thing that she said to me was, the big advantage of us is that we can be the bad guys for you. And I was just like, oh, thank you, because I can't.
I can do it as a voice actor, but not in real life.
Yeah, so they're the ones who get to put on the box when I'm getting bullied by people not paying me.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been the second episode of your new favorite internet show, Visioncon Live. Anything you'd like to leave off on before we end this off, Austin?
Again, take acting classes, be cool, and just, if you want to do this, just make sure that you're having fun. And that's the most important part of this job, is that we're all creating and we're all having fun doing it. And if you have fun doing it, keep it up, keep going, keep striving for it. And I hope to see you in the booth someday, that's my big thing for everybody. I hope that you have a great...
Sage words, Austin. Now, I do want to start this new segment. I'm making an executive decision on this. Sorry, Vision representatives. But we are going to announce the next episode tomorrow, but everybody who's tuning in is going to get the sneak preview of the guest for next episode. Next episode, we will be joined by none other than Michael Yurchak, actor and voice actor for such characters as Jet the Hawk from Sonic, and of course, Obito from the Naruto series. And that will be cool. 6:30 p.m. Central Time, of course. I believe 4:30 p.m. Pacific Time. So everybody watching right now, make sure you guys join us next Tuesday, June the 2nd at 6:30 p.m. Central Time, or your associating time zone. And that's about it. So thank you guys so much for tuning in and watching us. I'm Zach. This has been Austin Lee Matthews. All of the links that we have talked about on this stream will be in the YouTube video description when we post it. So don't worry if you guys missed any of that. And until next time, stay safe out there.
Cheers, everybody.